Imagine a civilization that watched its own gods die.
Right, which is just uh, an incomprehensible level of trauma.
Completely. And instead of mourning, they just weaponized their grief. They looked at the absolute catastrophic devastation of their entire species and decided that the only way to cure their broken hearts was to just burn the rest of the galaxy to the ground.
Yeah, they basically chose violence as a coping mechanism.
Exactly. So today, for you listening, we are looking at a society where hope isn't a comfort. It's a doctrine of absolute annihilation. Okay, let's unpack this because we're diving into the lore of Craftworld Biel-Tan from the Warhammer 40,000 universe.
And it really, it completely upends how we usually think about survival after an apocalypse.
Oh, for sure.
Because when you look at the landscape of the 41st millennium, or really like any post-apocalyptic scenario, the surviving factions are usually defined by scarcity, right? And desperation.
Yeah, you expect to find refugees huddled in the dark, preserving whatever scraps of their culture they managed to grab on the way out.
Exactly. But the Assyriani of Craftworld Biel-Tan, and these are Eldari survivors traveling through the void on a ship the size of a literal planet. They don't act like refugees at all.
No, not even a little bit.
They act like the bitter, militant architects of a new dawn.
Which is such a striking phrase, by the way. Militant architects.
Yeah, it really captures their whole vibe perfectly.
If you are listening to this, I really want you to picture the sheer scale of the cognitive dissonance at play here. When you picture a society dedicated to rebuilding a lost golden age, you usually picture, I don't know, scholars, engineers, philosophers.
Right, people building things, creating art.
Yeah, you don't picture an entire planetary population wrapped in the colors green and white, which are colors we typically associate with spring and peace and nature, acting as the vanguard for this uncompromising, brutal crusade.
It's a massive contradiction.
It really is. So, context for the listener, the Eldari Empire was shattered during an event known simply as the Fall, which was this extinction-level event caused by their own cultural excess that literally ripped a hole in reality.
Yeah, it just tore a hole right in the fabric of the universe.
And most of the survivors accepted this diminished fugitive's life. But Biel-Tan looked at the ashes and just said, no, we reject this reality.
And the psychology of that rejection is what makes them such a chilling case study.
Right.
Because they aren't in denial about the physical destruction of their empire, but they are in absolute denial about the permanence of it.
That's a great way to put it.
And to understand how a civilization can sustain that level of denial for thousands of years, we have to look at the linguistic and metaphorical frameworks they use.
The stories they tell themselves.
Exactly. And the most prominent one is the concept of winter and spring. For the Eldar of Biel-Tan, the fall wasn't the end of the world. It was just the onset of a long winter.
And a winter, by definition, is temporary, right?
Well, it implies a cyclical nature to history.
Yeah, if the freezing cold is just winter, you don't need to ask yourself the hard, introspective questions about why the temperature dropped in the first place.
You don't have to confront the fact that your ancestors' hubris caused the Ice Age.
Exactly. You just have to wait it out, keep the fires burning, and fight off the wolves. It completely absolves them of the finality of their situation.
It really does. And it is a highly effective coping mechanism on a macro-societal scale. If you frame a catastrophic permanent loss as just a temporary season, you give your population a unifying purpose.
A reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, you give them a reason to endure. The promise of a glorious spring. The inevitable resurrection of the Eldari Empire that becomes the gravitational center of their entire culture.
But a coping mechanism, when you take it to its extreme, it becomes a cage, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Because if you truly believe that spring is biologically and historically mandated to return, you stop adapting to the cold.
Wow. Yeah, you demand that the cold adapt to you.
Precisely.
It's like a deposed royal family living in a radioactive fallout shelter.
That's a great analogy.
But instead of rationing their food and trying to figure out how to farm the irradiated soil, they're burning their last precious calories performing elaborate coronation ceremonies in the dark.
Refusing to take off the crowns.
Yeah. The ritual of the past is literally starving their future. They are sitting in the rubble, wearing their crowns, looking at the other survivors going, why are you acting like this is forever? The servants will be back any minute.
That captures the aesthetic of their delusion perfectly, but I think we really need to look closer at the mechanics of it.
Okay, let's do it.
Because they aren't just sitting in the dark waiting. They are actively trying to slaughter anyone who walks across the surface of the ruined estate.
Okay, but I have to challenge you on calling it a delusion.
Oh?
Yeah, because If I have an armada of hyper-advanced warships and an entire society of biologically superior psychic warriors, and I say I'm going to take my ancestral home back, am I delusional? Or am I just a terrifyingly pragmatic extremist with the firepower to back up my claims?
That's a very fair point.
Like, calling it a delusion almost undersells the tangible physical threat they pose to the rest of the galaxy.
That is a crucial distinction to make. The delusion isn't in their military capability.
Right.
I mean, they absolutely have the guns.
Right.
But they're deluded in thinking that dropping bombs will somehow regrow the delicate cultural garden they lost.
Ah, I see what you mean.
And what's fascinating here is how that internal contradiction is perfectly encapsulated in their world rune. The symbol they paint on their armor, their banners, their ships. The Eye of Isha.
Yes, the linguistics of this rune are mind-blowing.
So interesting.
So for you listening, picture the Eye of Isha. It is a stylized eye weeping a single falling tear.
Right.
Visually, it is the most universal, unmistakable symbol of profound sorrow. It represents the grief of the fall, the weeping of their goddess, the unimaginable trauma of watching a galactic civilization just evaporate overnight.
A literal icon of mourning.
Exactly. And yet, culturally and linguistically, Biel-Tan has mandated that the name of this rune translates to rebirth of ancient days.
Yeah, they've taken a visual representation of devastating loss and just redefined it as a mandate for conquest.
But how does a society even do that? I mean, how do you re-educate billions of hyper-empathic, psychically sensitive beings to look at a weeping eye and feel aggressive entitlement instead of sadness?
Through rigorous, unyielding cultural engineering.
So just brainwashing on a galactic scale.
Well, sort of.
Yeah.
You have to remember, the Eldari experience emotions on a spectrum that makes human feeling seem incredibly dull.
Right. They feel things so intensely it can literally hurt them.
Yes. Their grief is profound enough to kill them. Their rage can physically alter their reality. So to survive the aftermath of the fall, they had to create the path system.
Okay, remind me how that works.
It's a rigid structure of discipline, where an Eldar focuses obsessively on one specific discipline at a time, like the path of the artisan or the mariner, to prevent their volatile emotions from overwhelming them.
Got it. So it's a way to compartmentalize.
Exactly. But on Biel-Tan, the cultural engineering goes a step further. They don't just manage their grief, they weaponize it. Wow. When a warrior of Biel-Tan looks at that tear, they are conditioned not to mourn the past, but to feel violent outrage that the past was stolen from them. Sorrow is transmuted directly into militancy.
It's basically Orwellian doublethink applied to emotional trauma.
That's exactly what it is.
Grief is victory, loss is future conquest. But even in that phrase, rebirth of ancient days, the paradox is glaring.
How so?
Because you can't rebirth an ancient day. An ancient day is, by the very laws of physics and time, in the past.
Right, you can't go backward.
Yeah, it proves that their entire civilizational gaze is locked backward. They aren't trying to build a new Aldari empire suited for the nightmare reality of the 41st millennium. They are trying to resurrect a ghost.
And to do that, they have structured their entire economy and society around a single, all-consuming industry.
Which is war, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
the path of the warrior. Biel-Tan is, by a massive margin, the most martial of all the craft worlds.
They're the ones everyone else looks at and goes, wow, you guys really need to calm down.
Pretty much. While other Eldari societies might have large populations dedicated to art or psychic farseeing or whatever, on Biel-Tan, the warrior caste is the absolute center of gravity.
It's their whole identity.
Yeah, their daily lives, their resource allocation, their political structures, everything is completely optimized to produce and support soldiers.
But logically, I mean, how does an economy function when the vast majority of the populace is geared for war?
It's difficult for sure.
Like, if your ultimate goal is to rebuild an empire of unparalleled beauty, an empire of poets, philosophers, architects, and musicians, isn't putting 90% of your population in armor entirely counterproductive?
It seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah. You cannot stab a renaissance into existence. If everyone is out practicing with the sword, who is growing the food, who is maintaining the life support on this planet-sized ship.
The automation of their society provides the foundation for that.
Oh, right, because they're incredibly advanced.
Yeah, they rely heavily on psychic engineering. You have bone singers shaping wraith bone, which is their psychoplastic material, and automated systems managing the ecological balance of the craft world.
Okay, so the robots, well, psychic robots are doing the chores.
Essentially, yes. It frees up their citizens.
Yeah.
But you've hit on the exact tragic irony of their existence.
Yeah.
The automation allows them to focus on war, but the intense focus on war destroys the very culture they're trying to save.
Yeah.
Because war is not a part-time job for them. It is a permanent psychological state of being.
The militant architects we talked about earlier?
Precisely. To Biel-Tan, war isn't just a necessary evil used to defend their borders, while their artists create safely inside the walls.
Right, it's not a means to an end.
Exactly. War is the culture. They've become so obsessed with clearing the physical space for their empire, wiping the galaxy clean of usurpers, as they call them, that they have sacrificed the cultural soul of the empire they actually want to bring back.
That is so tragic.
If you spend thousands of years dedicating your brightest minds to the intricate philosophy of how to cleanly decapitate an alien, you lose the capacity to write poetry that doesn't involve blood.
The means have completely devoured the ends.
Very well said.
They're clearing the foundation for a beautiful cathedral, but they forgot to draft the blueprints. All they brought were bulldozers and flamethrowers.
And when you look at how they actually waged this war, the mechanization of their violence becomes even more terrifying.
Because they don't just deploy armies, do they?
No, they don't. They deploy the Bazakain, the sword wind.
Right. Or, as it's often translated, the Tempest of Blades. And this isn't just like poetic naming, it's a tactical doctrine that perfectly reflects their psychological state.
Yes.
Explain the mechanics of that to me, because when we think of an army, we think of individuals. We think of sergeants giving orders, squads taking cover, adapting to terrain, holding a trench.
Normal military stuff.
Yeah, an army is a deeply mortal construct. But a tempest, a wind, that implies a literal force of nature.
The mechanics of the sword wind rely on the Eldari concept of the war mask.
Okay, what is the war mask?
Because their emotions are so volatile, like we mentioned, an Eldar cannot simply go to war, kill someone, and then come home and eat dinner.
Right, it would destroy them.
The psychic trauma of committing violence would shatter their minds completely. So they don a psychological persona, a psychic compartmentalization called the war mask.
It's like a mental switch they flip.
Exactly. When the mask is on, they feel no fear, no pity, no remorse. They literally become instruments of Cain, their god of murder.
So when Biel-Tan deploys the Swordwind, it's not just a synchronized military maneuver, it's a mass psychic dissociation.
That's a perfect way to describe it. You have tens of thousands of hyper-lethal aspect warriors, striking scorpions, howling banshees, fire dragons, all donning their war masks simultaneously.
That is terrifying.
And they strike from the webway with zero warning. There was no preliminary bombardment, no declaration of war, no demand for surrender.
Because a tempest doesn't negotiate. A wind doesn't offer terms.
Exactly. The Swordwind is designed to hit a planet with such overwhelming, perfectly choreographed violence that the enemy's command structure evaporates before they even realize they are under attack.
It strips away all the humanity or Eldari equivalent from the soldiers. It turns them into a singular natural disaster.
Yes, very much so.
I mean, if a hurricane hits your house, you can't be angry at the wind. You can only die in it. The Sword and Wind is designed to wipe the slate clean with maximum efficiency. It sounds less like a military campaign and more like an extermination process.
Because to Biel-Tan, it is an extermination process. They do not view the other races of the galaxy as geopolitical rivals. They view them as an infection.
And they are the cure.
Exactly. The Swordwind is the cure. And this absolute certainty of their own righteousness is what allows them to commit acts of staggering brutality without a second thought.
They're enacting the winter upon everyone else.
Yes, genuinely believing it is the only way to bring about their spring.
But, I mean, a Tempest can't differentiate between a military stronghold and a civilian farm.
No, it cannot.
And if their goal is to reclaim planets, they aren't just fighting rival armies, are they? This is where the sheer moral horror of Biel-Tan's crusade really crystallizes for me.
Yeah, the targets they choose are quite specific.
They aren't just pointing this tempest of blades at heavily fortified orc war bosses or chaos space marines. The ultimate irony is that their primary targets are often the Maiden Worlds.
And this raises an important question, which we really need to explore regarding exactly what that means for the people on the ground.
Right. So, for the listener, let's establish what a Maiden World is. These planets were terraformed by the ancient Eldari millions of years ago, before the Fall.
They seeded these barren rocks with life.
Yes, sculpting them into perfect, lush, self-sustaining paradises. They are the literal gardens of Eden of the 41st millennium.
Absolutely pristine environments.
But fast forward to the current era, and the Eldari Empire is gone. These planets have been sitting empty, or at least seemingly empty, for millennia, so naturally, non-Eldar colonists find them.
Right, and from the perspective of a human colonist or a Tau settler, finding a maiden world is the ultimate lottery ticket.
Oh, a total miracle.
The galaxy is a notoriously hostile place full of death worlds, radiation storms, and predatory ecosystems that want to eat you.
Yeah.
To stumble upon a planet with a perfect climate, breathable air, and incredibly fertile soil is just unheard of.
These colonists are pioneers. They're just families looking to build a life, to farm, to survive.
They're essentially setting up homesteads on an unclaimed island in the middle of a cosmic ocean.
And they might live there for generations. They build towns, they plant crops, they have children, and then one day the sky simply tears open.
The webway gates activate.
Yeah, and the sword wind pours out. A hyper-advanced, impossibly fast military force descends from the clouds and completely methodically wipes them out. Men, women, children, livestock, infrastructure eradicated.
Just completely erased.
And why? Because Biel-Tan's great-great ancestors planted the trees there 10,000 years ago.
It forces us to confront the ethical question of ownership across deep time.
Yeah, like when does a claim expire?
Exactly. How long does a deed hold its value after the civilization that wrote it ceases to exist? To the colonists, the land is abandoned. But to Biel-Tan, these colonists are usurpers.
They're squatters.
Worse than that, they are pests infesting a sacred heirloom. The fact that the Eldari haven't lived there for thousands of years is completely irrelevant to them.
Because it's their birthright.
Yes, the psychic resonance of the planet, the flora and fauna engineered by their ancestors, the very dirt it all belongs to the Eldari by divine right.
It is the ultimate manifestation of bitter pride. To look at a family farming a plot of land and see them not as sentient beings, but as a biological stain that needs to be scrubbed off the floor.
And this creates what we can call the paradox of paradise.
Ooh, tell me about that.
Well, the maiden worlds were designed to be monuments to life. They were the absolute apex of the ancient Eldar's ability to nurture and create beauty.
Right, the pinnacle of their art.
Yet, because of Biel-Tan's obsessive, violent entitlement to them, these exact planets become the epicenters of the most horrific bloodshed in the sector.
They are turning literal gardens of Eden into slaughterhouses.
It's staggering.
You have a faction whose entire stated goal is to preserve and rebuild the beauty of their lost civilization. But to do that, they travel to the most beautiful, life-affirming locations left in the galaxy, and they drench the grass in blood.
They crater the perfect landscapes with plasma fire.
The dissonance of an Eldari warrior bleeding out on a paradise world they were supposedly trying to protect. They are destroying the biosphere to save the real estate.
It perfectly mirrors the internal tragedy of Biel-Tan. A symbol of life in creation becomes a catalyst for death.
It's so twisted.
They are so obsessed with the idea of paradise that they are willing to completely desecrate the physical reality of it. It is the logic of a deeply toxic relationship.
Oh, like if I can't have you, nobody can.
Exactly. If I cannot have this perfectly on my terms, no one else is allowed to touch it, and I will destroy you for even looking at it.
And they don't even see the contradiction. By unleashing the Swordwind on a maiden world, they are defiling the very thing they claim is sacred.
Not blind to it.
Because their culture of war is so all-encompassing that they literally do not have the philosophical tools to recognize their own hypocrisy. It is a consuming, self-destructive pride.
Which makes them incredibly brittle.
Brittle? How do you mean?
Well, when a society's entire foundation is built on an unyielding narrative of biological supremacy and destined victory, any challenge to that narrative is an existential threat.
Oh, because if they're wrong about one thing, the whole house of cards falls down.
Exactly. They cannot afford to compromise, because compromise would require introspection. And introspection would force them to look at the blood on their hands and ask if it was worth it.
And they can't do that.
No. So what happens when an unstoppable, rigid, prideful force meets a catastrophic reality check?
Well, this brings us to a massively pivotal moment in their recent history, an event known as the Fracturing, which occurred during a period called the Gathering Storm.
A huge turning point in the lore.
So just looking at the structural mechanics of a craft world, these things are marvels of psychic engineering.
Truly incredible.
They are continental-sized ships made of wraithbone, which is essentially solidified psychic energy. It's a living material that responds to the emotions and souls of the Eldari.
Yes, the very architecture of their home is tied to their collective psyche. And at the center of that is the infinity circuit,
Right.
which runs through the wraithbone core of the craft world and houses the souls of their dead ancestors. It is their most sacred sanctuary, protecting their dead from being consumed by the warp.
Right. It's a literal living graveyard. So during the Gathering Storm, due to a massive demonic incursion and the psychic shockwaves of a god of the dead being partially awakened, and look, we aren't going to get bogged down in the minutiae of the warp physics here, but the crucial takeaway is that craft world Biel-Tan physically broke.
It literally cracked open.
Yeah. The wraithbone skeleton of their world ship shattered. The infinity circuit was breached. Their home, the very staging ground for their militant crusade, was torn apart from the inside out.
It is the ultimate violation. The physical manifestation of their society, the vessel carrying them through the long winter, suffered a catastrophic structural failure.
Millions died.
Yes, and their ancestors' souls were exposed to the exact nightmare they had spent millennia trying to avoid.
So put yourself in the shoes of an autarch, right? A military leader of Biel-Tan, standing in the ruined, shattered halls of your home.
It would be devastating.
You have based your entire civilization's identity on being the strong, conquering architects of a new dawn. You have sacrificed your art, your peace, and your morality to build the Swordwind.
All for this singular purpose.
And what has it gotten you? Your crusade hasn't brought back the ancient empire. It hasn't protected your people. It has led directly to your own world breaking apart under your feet.
It's the ultimate failure of their philosophy.
Right. So how does the collective psyche process that? Do they finally look at the ruins and say, you know what? Maybe this strategy of endless war is a failure. Maybe we need to pivot.
Maybe try diplomacy.
Yeah, maybe focus on internal healing or talk with the other survivor factions. Do they do that?
The psychological breaking point of a fanatic is a fascinating thing to observe.
Hmm.
Because the answer is no. They do not pivot.
Not even a little.
In fact, they do the exact opposite. When the ground beneath their feet splits open, the collective psyche of Biel-Tan patches the cognitive dissonance with extreme fanaticism.
Wow.
The source material explicitly states that even in their shattered state, they cling to their militant orthodoxy with renewed vigor.
It's the sunk cost fallacy applied to a galactic civilization. It is breathtaking in its stubbornness.
If we look at the sociology of doomsday cults or highly radicalized political movements, this is actually a very well-documented phenomenon.
Really? Like in real life?
Yes. When a deeply held core belief is presented with irrefutable contradictory evidence, like when the prophecy fails or the world doesn't end on the predicted date, the true believers rarely abandon the belief.
They just find an excuse.
Instead, they double down. The belief has become a matter of pure identity. To abandon the crusade now would be to admit that the long winter isn't a season, it's just the new reality.
Oh, man. It would mean admitting that the millions of colonists they slaughtered on the Maiden Worlds died for absolutely nothing.
Precisely. It would mean having to look at the Eye of Isha and admit that it's just a tear.
That they aren't the heroic architects of a rebirth. They're just traumatized survivors committing war crimes in the dark.
And their pride simply will not allow them to process that truth. They would literally rather shatter completely than bend an inch.
So when the universe proves their crusade is a failure, their response is to just reload and fight harder.
They divide their forces. Many leave the ruined craft world to form fleet-based armadas, becoming even more aggressive and even more mobile.
Just a roaming tempest now.
They double down on the Swordwind. It is a defense mechanism against existential despair. If they stop moving, if they stop killing, the reality of what they have lost and what they have become will finally catch up to them.
So what does this all mean? We started by asking how a beautiful concept like hope can be twisted into a weapon of mass destruction.
Right.
And looking at the tragedy of Biel-Tan, the conclusion is incredibly grim. They are a people entirely subsumed by the past, using a dream of a lost empire as a blank check for endless bloodshed. A beautiful dream has metamorphosed into the most horrific nightmare.
It really is a profound observation on the nature of nostalgia.
Yeah.
And how dangerous it becomes when it is coupled with absolute certainty.
Because usually when we think of someone living in the past, it evokes pity. We picture the former high school star athlete, 50 years old, still wearing his varsity jacket at the local bar, talking about the state championship.
Right. It's sad, it's pathetic, but it is ultimately harmless.
But for Biel-Tan, living in the past isn't a passive state of melancholy. Nostalgia is weaponized.
Because their nostalgia isn't just a longing for what was. It is a violent, uncompromising entitlement to what they believe should still be.
That entitlement is key.
And when you combine that aggressive entitlement with the concept of hope, the hope for a new dawn, the hope for a restored empire, you create remarkably dangerous psychological cocktail.
We are conditioned to view hope as a purely positive force, aren't we?
Always. Hope is the light in the dark. Hope is what gives people the strength to endure oppression.
But hope, when it's unmoored from reality and tied to this exclusionary supremacist vision of the past, becomes the ultimate justification for atrocity.
It really does.
If you are listening to this, I think this is the crucial lesson we can extract from this deep dive. It's a stark reminder that the most horrific acts in history, and this applies just as much to human history as it does to the science fiction of the 41st millennium, are rarely committed by people who wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and say, I am going to be the villain today.
No, the greatest atrocities are almost always committed by those who are absolutely convinced of their own righteousness.
They think they're saving the world.
They are committed by people obsessed with a beautiful dream. Whether that dream is restoring a lost golden age, reclaiming a promised land, or building a flawless utopia, the mechanics of the fanaticism remain exactly the same.
The dream becomes so important, so blindingly beautiful, that any action taken to achieve it is immediately justified.
To the warriors of Biel-Tan, the genocide of innocent colonists on the Maiden Worlds isn't murder. It's just pulling weeds in the garden of their future empire.
The ultimate horror of Biel-Tan isn't the physical devastation of the Tempest of Blades. It isn't the hyper-advanced weaponry or the psychic mastery. The ultimate horror is their absolute, unshakable certainty.
That conviction.
It's the terrifying reality that as they are descending from the sky to slaughter families on a paradise world, they genuinely, with all their hearts, believe they are the righteous heroes of the story.
They are trying to force a spring that will never come by creating an endless, bloody winter for everyone else in the galaxy.
It is the tragic paradox that defines them. In their desperate, bloody quest to resurrect the glorious Eldari Empire, they have become the very monsters that ensure the galaxy remains a grim, dark place.
They are so fixated on the destination that they have completely lost their way on the journey.
Which leaves me with one final lingering thought for you to chew on as we wrap up this deep dive. Let's run a hypothetical based on everything we've unpacked today.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Let's imagine, against all mathematical odds and geopolitical realities, that Biel-Tan actually succeeds.
A total victory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Imagine they deploy the Swordwind across the entire galaxy. They wipe out every single colonist. They purge all the usurpers. They reclaim every single Maiden World. They rebuild the Webway. And they finally reestablish the exact physical borders of the ancient Eldari Empire. The long winter is officially over.
Okay, they've won.
What happens the day after they win?
Oh, wow.
You have a society that has forged its entire culture, its daily routines, its linguistics, its economy, and its very soul around a bitter, unyielding crusade of war. They have no artists who don't paint with blood.
They have no diplomats.
Exactly. They have no builders who aren't militant architects. They have absolutely no tools to actually live in a time of peace.
They wouldn't know what to do with it.
If they won, they would look around their pristine, reclaimed paradise and they would realize they have no idea how to live in it. In their relentless, uncompromising quest to save their civilization, did they actually destroy the very soul of it?
That is a haunting thought to end on.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love unpacking these incredible, complex realities with you, and we'll see you on the next one.